Welcome to The Business Behind Your Business, the podcast where we delve into the financial strategies and insights that drive success for small and medium-sized business owners. I'm your host, Paul Sweeney, and in each episode we bring you expert guests who share practical advice, real-world experiences, and actionable tips to empower you on your business journey. Whether you're a seasoned entrepreneur or just starting out, get ready to uncover the secrets to success and gain valuable insights into the business behind your business. Welcome back to the Business Behind Your Business podcast. I'm your host, Paul Sweeney. It's great to be with you again. Looking at today, a topic that's come up quite a few times recently in conversations I've had with business owners, and that is whether they should be cutting back on their costs, whether they should be cutting back on spending. And is it the right time to do that, to cut back on costs? Is it the right time to actually stop spending in order to increase profits? Now, when we look at that, yes, there's some immediate benefits of cutting some costs because we often get into this habit of spending more than we need to on certain activities or certain areas of our business. But is cutting costs actually the best option for us? Now, what I want to look at here is that, there are some benefits of cutting costs, but there's also some pitfalls of cutting costs. And we need to be very mindful of those before we just launch in and just wholesale start cutting back, stopping spending. Look, I am a big believer that you do need to control your costs. You do need to be mindful of where you're spending your money. But there are some traps in cutting costs purely for saving profit, saving money. So what we're going to look at is, one of the common things or some of the common things that people are doing to cut costs in their business, and what are some of the implications? Are they good or bad? And then we're going to look at some examples of how you could improve the spending or the allocation of your resources in your business and some alternatives to cost cutting. So we're going to dive in first and look at this whole idea of why do we want to cut costs? Well, firstly, the reason we're wanting to focus on cutting costs is we've reached a point, we've reviewed our financial results, and we're not achieving the outcomes we want, where our profits aren't as high, or we might even have a loss. And that's not something we really want. So the first thing we look at, a lot of people will focus on the fixed costs or the overheads and look at, well, are we spending too much money? Now, if you've been a regular listener to the podcast, you would have heard me talking about the need to review your costs on a regular basis, because there is that cost creep. And particularly when we're looking at things like software subscriptions, rents, employee wages, those things tend to creep up over time. So we do need to have a regular process of reviewing them to make sure that they are actually in line and we are still getting the value out of those resources. So if you want to have a look at or have a listen to what I've said in the past about reviewing your expenditure, come and have a look at the episode we've done on zombie spending and looking at reviewing your software costs. But let's move on and look at, well, what else can happen with cutting costs. Now, if we cut costs, if we save $1 of costs, we're adding $1 to our profit. Now, we're doing that, and that might be a $1 each year that we're saving. But the following year, our costs are going to go up. So we need to have another look at what costs are there. And some of these increases in costs we can't control because the pricing, we're a price taker. We don't get a choice about it. So if we want to keep using a product or a resource, sometimes we don't have a choice. We don't even have a position to negotiate with the supplier, particularly when we're looking at large software companies supplying core products or products that we use on a regular basis. We don't have a choice about what price to take. So if we save $1 there, it's only $1 we're saving. So is that the best way of doing it? Well, if we're spending more than we should, and look, an example of that is sometimes I'll walk into a business and it's very obvious that they've spent way more than they need to on their furnishings, on their office. Instead of having a good quality desk, a good quality chair, they've gone over the top. Instead of spending a couple of $100s on a good desk and chair, they spent thousands. Now that desk itself is not going to produce any income for you. So the question is, when you're spending on furniture, office equipment, is it actually going to be producing income, or is it just there for aesthetic view? Is it just there to make you feel good? And what does that impact have on you? Now, sometimes we go into other offices and they've just cut back so much that it's the bare minimum, and it's not a great place to work. Sometimes it's not a great place to work. So you look as an employee, you're going, well, geez, you could spend a little bit of money and just get us some better quality coffee so we could actually enjoy it, and we don't have to think about going out to the coffee shop around the corner and waiting and taking that time when we could be, we could just go to the break room, grab a good quality coffee, and go back to work, and minimum amount of downtime where we're a lot more efficient. So sometimes we cut back the cost too much. So we've got to get a balance here. So let's look at some of the key things here. Is does the spending that you're engaging in actually produce income? So there's a couple of different types of spending here. We've got income that doesn't directly produce income, and some of these examples are rent, your desks, some signage. It's not going to produce a return on investment. There are expenses in there that aren't directly going to produce an income. So one of the key things for us is we have licenses and registrations. Yes, indirectly that we can't produce income without them, but they are not in themselves going to add value to us. They're not going to add income to us. So they're a necessary expense, but they don't drive any revenue. Other types of expenses will create revenue. So where are you spending your advertising and marketing? Is it actually creating a revenue stream? That is something that will drive production, that will drive future sales, that will drive future revenue. But we do need to be careful there and make sure that where we're spending the money is actually delivering the results that we need. So a lot of time people will spend on advertising and marketing. They'll spend thousands. It's not uncommon to spend $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 a month on a new marketing program, and it doesn't deliver. But a lot of the time it's a case of, well, did we actually invest our time into that marketing program as well to make sure that we were focused on the right customer, the right message? If we aren't, then we're not spending our money effectively. We would need to review how we're spending that. So maybe we're spending on an advertising program that is never going to deliver for us. And look, we've all been guilty of that in the past. We've been guilty of investing our time and money into, I guess, what seemed like a really good strategy at the time. But when we actually looked at the results and the outcomes, it was never going to deliver. It was never going to deliver the right type of customer for us. So it wasn't a great use of our time. So it was good to cut back on that cost and say, put an end to that. But instead, take that cost that we'd spent there and put it into something that's actually going to generate more income. So some costs will not generate income or not even help to produce, but they're necessary. They're a supporting activity. So sometimes it's a case of, well, rent. Okay, if you're in your manufacturing, you need somewhere to produce. So the rent's not going to directly produce, but the machinery and your employees are. So it's necessary. But the case is, do you need to be in a particular location where you're spending $25,000 a month on rent? Or could you just move a couple of suburbs away and pay less rent? Okay, because the rent itself is not actually going to produce income. You'll still have the same machinery, you'll still have the same employees, but you'll be saving on that rent. Now, that's not an easy or a quick fix because often negotiating a new rental lease takes time. Finding the property, particularly at the moment, can be hard. So it's not actually a quick fix. So sometimes, though, the other thing that we do is we'll cut costs in one area, but we'll actually increase costs in another area, because the costs that we've cut were actually essential, but they were sort of, I guess, hidden in a way. So we might say, well, hang on, instead of buying product X, we're going to buy product Y. But what we find is that product Y takes longer. It causes more issues with, say, maybe the machinery that we're using, or maybe your employees take longer to actually produce using that tool or that kind of material. Or maybe you have more, more work that's not fit for sale. You might produce a lot more, but a lot more of it is unfit for sale. So you've got a higher wastage. So we need to be careful about that. So, and rushing into cheaper spending, but getting a poorer quality in the outcome. And look, and that leads into this issue of damaging your brand, damaging your reputation. Okay, if you reduce your costs and it inhibits your ability to deliver the good quality product that you were delivering to customers, then your customers are going to be disappointed and they're going to start looking elsewhere. So that cost cutting exercise that you did is actually going to be reducing your sales, your future sales, and damaging your brand. And we want to avoid that. So cost cutting, we need to be very mindful of the consequences of when we do cut back on costs. There's plenty of scope to cut back on discretionary spending or spending that is excessive. Well, you do need to be very careful about cutting costs that are essential to providing a good quality product, a good quality service at the level that your customers expect and are willing to pay for at a profit for you. So be mindful of cutting back the wrong costs. So I see that a lot, and a lot of people are looking at it, and it's a reactionary. So it is a response. I guess it's a bit of a what we call a knee-jerk response to I haven't made as much profit. I've got to start cutting back on my spending. But we need to be, I guess, take a step back and have a good broad look at, is that spending actually a key part of me being able to provide the quality service, the quality product that my customers are going to continue to buy from me and that I can make a profit from. I don't want to, cut spending but increase costs in another area. I don't want to cut spending, but it reduces my ability to produce, it reduces my ability to sell. So we need to be very careful of that. So we've talked about cost cutting. Are there some areas that we can do it? Well, yes, there are. So there's 10 key points I want to just go through quickly about areas where we can either cut costs or be more efficient with our spending. So I'm going to just fly through these really quickly. So the first thing though, grab your profit and loss, grab your balance sheet, grab your profit and loss, grab your financial figures, and just go through that list of expenses and just see, are there areas where we are actually spending too much, or that price that we're paying has really gradually increased so to a point where it's now a really large sum of money, and maybe we should look at a different way of sourcing that product. Maybe we should look at a different supplier or maybe an alternative. But before we go and jump into purchasing from that alternative supplier, are we going to be losing anything in quality? So coming back to that pitfall of substituting a poorer quality outcome by cutting costs. So let's be mindful of that. But go through your list of expenses and you'll be able to find areas where you can cut costs. So an example for us is that we stopped delivering a particular service, but we were still paying the subscription for the tool needed to provide that service. So, and because it was sort of bundled up with something else that we were using, it sort of wasn't front of mind when we were looking at our costs. But when we went through this exercise of strategically reviewing every expense line, we were able to cut back quite a lot of costs on unnecessary spending that we no longer needed. So that's a key thing. So have a look at, where are you spending your money? Negotiating with suppliers. Sometimes you can negotiate a better deal. Sometimes there are better deals available, particularly when we look at bulk spending. And look, that's a trap in itself, spending more than you need to, but stocking up on more product than you actually need to, that you've got to store it somewhere, you've got to sell it. So negotiating with suppliers is not just about getting bulk rates and buying more product to get a cheaper price, because if you're buying more product and it's sitting there on your shelves, that's not actually an advantage. It's not freeing up your cash flow. It's actually draining your cash flow. But you can actually look at better terms with your suppliers. So it's always worth asking the question. So looking at, are there better ways that we can do things? Can we reduce waste? Are we buying things that are being wasted? And this does happen quite a lot, and particularly where I guess an example here is in a manufacturing environment when we're setting up equipment and tooling. How much wasted material is there? Can we be more efficient with the way that we're actually producing that product or creating that product? Are we wasting materials? Are we wasting time by doing, smaller production runs and having to set up our equipment more often? Can we gain some efficiency by streamlining our productive processes, being more effective with the way that we actually produce? And that's an alternative to actually reducing costs or direct spending costs, because we're reducing the cost in terms of time and wastage. So that's a good one to keep in mind. Reducing fixed costs, rents, utilities, salaries, they're the three most common ones. So utilities, electricity, light, power, gas, water. Some people are sort of still in the situation of paying for office space, factory space that they're not using. Downsizing your office space requirements is a good way to reduce costs without having an impact on your productivity, particularly with more and more people working either from home or a hybrid of some days in the office and some days not. Do you actually need all the space that you're renting? Because rent is a big cost in a lot of businesses. It's up to 1/3 or even more of their fixed costs. Utilities is another example. Like, a lot of the electricity suppliers are not really forthcoming about you being able to get a cheaper rate until you go and ask them for it. We discovered that recently, and it was a bit of a slap in the face that we hadn't done it earlier, because we're able to save quite a substantial amount on our electricity for the office. And it was all because we didn't even know, or we hadn't taken the time to go and check the rates on offer. And of course, they're not going to be as forthcoming and tell us that, hey, you should be on this plan because we'll save you a lot of money. They were quite happy to keep getting the payments from us. But until we actually had a look at the prices and the plans available, we didn't change. So now we've done that. We've reduced some costs there. And that's just added to our bottom line. So one of the things we're seeing a lot of is outsourcing your non-core functions, payroll, IT support, marketing. Outsourcing to people who actually specialize in those. They've got the systems, the efficiency, the technology to do that so much faster, so much more efficiently, and that's their skill set. So don't try and learn too many skills. Outsource those to professionals, people experienced. They can do the job faster, more efficiently, more effectively than you can. And that saves you time and cost to actually focus on growing your business, growing your revenue. Energy saving measures, turning off unused equipment. Electricity seems to be that one cost that's really going through the roof at the moment. And look, the devices we're using use so much energy. So is there a way that you can actually minimize the amount of electricity you're using, particularly when you're not actually in the office or in the factory? We've seen more and more larger companies scaling back the amount of lights that are used after hours. When the store is closed, they've got minimal lighting on, still enough to show that the store is there and display their product, but it's actually at a reduced amount of energy usage. So saving costs there. Reviewing and adjusting your pricing. Now, this is an alternative to actually reducing your costs, and it's an important one. So if you can review the pricing strategy you've got, you might actually be more efficient at producing. Because a lot of business owners, and this, Bruce Gleason, who's often been on the podcast as a guest, one of the things Bruce often says is that most small business owners, or most business owners, in fact, don't know what it really costs to produce. So if you don't know what it actually costs you to produce your product, it's very hard to get your pricing right. So take the time and understand the cost of producing your product, and then you can adjust the pricing. So that's I guess turning that cost cutting on its head, but actually identifying what's the real cost of producing. Improving your inventory management. Well, I've talked about buying too much product and not being able to sell it efficiently. Okay, because you'll buy the product in bulk to get a cheaper price. But unless you're able to sell that product and turn it over very quickly, it's actually going to cost you more because you've got to store it. It prevents you from buying new product, which you could probably sell at a faster rate. Your cash is tied up So that's not a good thing. And it gives you limited opportunity, particularly if that stock might be superseded or go out of date or become less popular. So we need to be very mindful about how much stock we've got and how fast we turn it around, not overproducing on items which are not going to sell quickly. So be very careful of that. Use technology. I've always been a big believer in using technology efficiently to do the job more effectively. Sometimes we use technology and we get to the wrong result faster, which is not a great outcome because then we have to go back and redo it. But using technology effectively, you can replace a lot of manual systems or repetitive systems. Cloud-based technology, particularly in the accounting space, has really saved a lot of that manual crunching labor time and freed us up to do our focus on more productive services to our clients, providing a better outcome at a more cost-effective rate. And that's been a bonus. So you look at how you're using technology. And look, it's not just a one-off exercise. Look, a lot of people only do this once they get their financial results for the end of the year. And they go, well, how can I cut costs going forward? But really, you need to be reviewing this and monitoring on a regular basis. You need to be regularly on top of your financial statements, your financial results, and reviewing your costs continually throughout the year so that you are able to adapt and make changes as and when you need to. And by being adaptable and on top of it, having good information, full knowledge of your position, you can make effective decisions more quickly. And that's a better outcome for your business. So there are quite a few things about cost cutting there. We've talked about a lot of different things. Alternatives to cutting costs to grow your profit, really, it comes down to pricing, growing your customer base, selling more effectively, and making sure you price your product effectively for profit. So it comes back to knowing how much does it actually cost you to produce or cost you to sell. So making sure that you get your pricing right, but you need to understand your costs before you can price for profit. So we've talked a lot about cost cutting and some of the traps, some of the advantages. Hopefully that's been helpful to you. And look, we often get questions about this. So if you've got questions, love to hear from you. Send us an email to podcast@thebusinessbehindyourbusiness.com. I love hearing your questions and would love to be able to answer any more. So if you've got a question, not just about costs or profit, but anything to do with business, send it into podcast@thebusinessbehindyourbusiness.com. We look forward to hearing your question and answering it on a future episode. That's a wrap for this episode of The Business Behind Your Business. We hope you found today's discussion insightful and valuable for your business journey. Before we go, don't forget to subscribe to our podcast on your favorite platform. Share it with fellow business owners who could benefit and send in your burning questions because we love hearing from you. Missed any of our previous episodes or looking for additional resources to help grow your business? Head over to our website at thebusinessbehindyourbusiness.com. There you'll find our full archive of past episodes along with show notes, transcripts, and links to valuable resources mentioned in each episode. Your journey to business success continues at thebusinessbehindyourbusiness.com. Until next time, stay inspired, stay informed, and keep building the business of your dreams.